We've been looking at a number of stories that are from the Old Testament that talk about God at work in the lives of the children of Israel. And the reason we've been talking about these stories is because it's going to help us better understand the Seder meal, the idea of the Passover feast, and the things that connect with the new covenant that Jesus is ushering in. So there's actually a connection between these stories and God's working in the children of Israel, and also what we're going to be talking about leading up to Holy Week and Easter. You know, I remember a few years ago a song on the radio that had two phrases that really stuck with me. The words were, "I say show me and I'll trust you. But God says, trust me, and I'll show you." I say, show me, and I'll trust you. But God says, trust me, and I'll show you. I said, Lord, I'm going through a tough time right now. You know, finances are tight. I'm not sure how I'm going to make ends meet. But if you just get me through this, I'll never doubt that you're going to be with me and help me in the future. But God says, you can trust me now, even before everything is worked out, because I will never leave you nor forsake you. I will be with you always. I say, Lord, if you would just help my prodigal son get his life together, then I'll trust you and never doubt that you're at work in the future. But God says, I love your prodigal son even more than you do. God has miraculously led the children of Israel out of Egypt and their slavery. He's delivered them from Pharaoh's army by parting the Red Sea. You know, He's given them the Ten Commandments, the instructions that He wants them to live by. He tells them about the promised land, which is theirs for the taking. Moses sends 12 spies into that land to check it out. And when they come back, 10 of the spies say, oh, the Canaanites are giants. They're too big. We can never conquer them. But there were two people. There was Joshua and Caleb who came back and said, we can do it because God is on our side. But the people listened to the 10 and they were afraid to go into the promised land. So what resulted was they wandered in the desert for 40 years. Well, after wandering in the desert for 40 years, it was not until every person who was the age of 20 at the time that the spies came back and gave the report that those who were 20 years of age or older had died. A whole generation had died. And now Joshua and Caleb, the only two that believed God 40 years ago, are now, Joshua's the one that's going to be able to lead them into the promised land. You know, 40 years have passed since they were delivered from their bondage in Egypt. Moses has died, and now Joshua is the new leader, and it's time to go into the promised land. I want us to look at that story found in Joshua chapter 3. I'm going to begin reading with verse 1. It says, early in the morning, Joshua and all the Israelites set out from Shittim and went to the Jordan, where they camped before crossing over. After 3 days, the officers went throughout the camp, giving orders to the people. When you see the ark of the covenant of the Lord your God and the priests who are the Levites carrying it, you are to move out from your positions and follow it. Then you will know which way to go, since you have never been this way before. But keep a distance of about 1,000 yards between you and the ark. Do not go near it. Joshua told the people, consecrate yourselves, for tomorrow the Lord will do amazing things among you. A whole generation has died without experiencing God's promises in their life because they weren't willing to trust Him. Joshua is saying, prepare yourself. Prepare yourself for what God is going to do, and you will experience some amazing things. Well, listen as the story continues in verse 6. Joshua said to the priests, take up the ark of the covenant and pass on ahead of the people. So they took it up and went ahead of them. And the Lord said to Joshua, today I will begin to exalt you in the eyes of all Israel, so they may know that I am with you as I was with Moses. Tell the priests who carry the Ark of the Covenant, when you reach the edge of the Jordan's waters, go and stand in the river. Now jumping down to verse 15. Now the Jordan is at flood stage all during harvest. Yet as soon as the priests who carried the ark reached the Jordan and their feet touched the water's edge, the water from upstream stopped flowing. It piled up in a heap a great distance away at a town called Adam in the vicinity of Zarethan. While the water flowing down to the Sea of Arabia, the Salt Sea, was completely cut off. So the people crossed over opposite Jericho. The priests who carried the Ark of the Covenant of the Lord stood firm on dry ground in the middle of the Jordan, while all Israel passed by until the whole nation had completed the crossing on dry ground. As the story goes on in Joshua 4, it says that Joshua instructed someone from each of the 12 tribes, 12 men, to go into the river, in the riverbed, and to get a stone. And they were to bring those stones out, and they were to pile them up to mark the spot, to mark the date, mark the occasion in which God had brought them through. God had stopped the river, and God had brought them through the River Jordan. You know, there's a song that we sing, Come Thou Fount of Every Blessing. And in that song there's a phrase that says, Here I raise mine Ebenezer. You know, here I mark the spot as to what God has done. And that's what's happening as they cross over. They're not building a monument to Joshua. They're not building a golden calf like Pastor Alex talked about last week. But they took these 12 stones and they marked the spot. They marked the place where God had done a great thing. Before they crossed the Jordan River, Joshua had sent spies into the country just like Moses had done 40 years prior. But this time, as the spies come back, the report that they brought back was that the Canaanites were terrified of the Israelites. And the reason the Canaanites, these giants that were scared of the Israelites, was because they had heard about the Israelites' God. And they believed that if their God was, the Israelites' God was on their side, then the Canaanites could not stand against them. But they did have a sense of confidence. They did have a sense of protection because the Jordan River was at flood stage. And when the Jordan River was at flood stage, it was very difficult for anyone to get across, especially to think all the children of Israel were going to come across at that point. So they had a sense of security at that moment. You know, the Jordan River flowed from the top of Mount Hermon to the Sea of Galilee, and then from the Sea of Galilee to the Dead Sea. Now, the word Jordan means to descend. As this river descended from Mount Hermon, which was 9,000 feet above sea level, to the Dead Sea, which was 1,400 feet below sea level, the Jordan River makes a descent of 10,400 feet in a matter of 90 miles as the crow flies. And that's a pretty steep descent for the river to come. And because of the relatively steep descent, it makes it one of the fastest moving rivers in the world. Now, as you see a picture of the Jordan River today, it may not be as fast moving, but that's because there are all sorts of hydroelectric plants and dams along the way. But the Jordan River is not as big as the Mississippi. It's not even as big as the Wabash is in most places. And yet, at the time the Jordan River was at flood stage, it was moving very rapidly. Remember when the children of Israel walked through the Red Sea? It was an issue that Moses raised his staff, the waters parted, and they walked through on dry land. But this time the instructions are different. This time it's not that God is going to stop the waters of the Jordan and then they can walk through. No, it's a matter that the priests need to come up to the river and step into the water. And then God will stop it from flowing.